We move on, Rita.
Well, yes, let's, because today the Daily Telly had a humdinger of a front page. Let's have a look at it here. It comes as Annastacia Palaszczuk, the Queensland Premier, has called for the Morrison government to extend JobKeeper to prop up Queensland's ailing tourism industry. Well, New South Wales Treasurer Dominic Perrottet was having none of that. He said Queensland closed one day asking someone else to pick up the tab next. People in New South Wales have not only been banned from entering Queensland, but Queensland wants the taxpayers of New South Wales to pay for that decision. But how good is that front page? I mean, that is just brilliant. Banana, bender, bungles. No, what is going on? I mean, JobKeeper can't possibly be extended and extended and extended. We don't have some endless well of money. We're in so much debt. It's going to take decades to pay back. And yet we've got the Queensland Premier who closes the borders at the drop of a hat, having a handout, wanting a little bit more cash.
Well, I mean, I think Annastacia Palaszczuk has made some fair points there today. The first thing to note, of course, is that strong borders work, and borders have been very effective in containing COVID in this country and, of course, globally. The second point is that, yes, there is a very strong case for the extension of JobKeeper. Now, I'm not suggesting that it should be extended across the board, but I do think there is a good argument for certain regions of Australia and in certain sectors of the economy for JobKeeper or some form of assistance to continue. So, for example, in central Melbourne, which has been probably the hardest hit geographic region in the country, I think there's a case for some extension of assistance. Also, in some regional areas that rely on tourism,
Nicholas,
etc.
you cannot have...
Also, for some sectors of the economy, tourism being crushed, education, higher education, international education being crushed. And in so those aviation sector being crushed. So in those sectors, again, for people who work in those sectors, I think there is a fair case for some form of extension to JobKeeper, Rita.
Well, what about Dominic Perrottet's point that Queensland and Victoria, it sounds like, want the rest of the country to pick up the tab for their incompetence? They didn't handle this crisis as well as other places, and yet they don't want to face the consequences of that. They want to have the rest of the country prop them up again. I mean, that is just not sustainable in itself, is it? I mean, why should taxpayers in New South Wales pay even more to prop up small businesses, whether you're talking in Melbourne or Queensland's tourism sector?
Look, every government in Australia has made mistakes during this crisis. This is happening live, OK, not with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. So, you know, I think the federal government has messed things up around aged care. I think New South Wales got things wrong around the Ruby Princess. Victoria messed up hotel quarantine the first time around. And I think Queensland has gone too far on border closures at some point. The point, though, is that we are all in this together. And yes, notwithstanding the fact that some mistakes have been made, there is still a strong case for some regions and some sectors of the economy to continue to get some assistance so that we can all come out of this together, and ultimately the Australian economy and Australian people will be stronger for that assistance.
I just don't know about this. I just look at the young people in this country who are going to be paying such an enormous price for years to come for how we've handled this. Now, we keep putting ourselves up on a pedestal saying, hey, look at how well we're doing. Well, we're paying a bloody big price for how well we're doing, and future generations will be paying for that because we have accumulated the sort of debt that has never been seen before in this country, and it's going to take decades to pay off, and we've still... are closed off from the rest of the world. I mean, we can't even get our citizens back in here. So I think sometimes the self-congratulation needs to just be tempered down a little bit, and we look at the full consequences of the path we've taken, particularly when we sit in judgment of countries like Sweden.